Yeah, sometimes that happens. I'm always like, oh, the government's shutting me off. They don't give a
These
shit.
days, you never know.
I know. I
They
know.
got guys in there just messing with people.
Well, after the Twitter file stuff, so let's start with that, right? Because so let me kind of like reintroduce. So this is Justin from the Nielson Show. This week on the show, we're going to do a little bit of a conversation between populist left and right. And just to intro him, he's someone who I've known for a long time. And when Trump was running originally in 2016, he and I had these conversations. And I just remember saying, Justin, Trump doesn't give a shit about you. He takes a crap on a golden toilet in Manhattan. And Justin goes, yeah, but he's not a Bush or a Clinton. And that really stuck with me because I was like, wow, now I get it. And I think that a lot of liberals think that everyone who voted for Trump is a racist. And I live in
Yeah,
LA.
maybe we should just get that out of the way, So
Yeah.
I'm a racist. I voted for Trump.
So, hey, let me tell you something though. Full disclosure, 2020, I'm going to make a confession. I did too. I voted for Trump in 2020.
You
And here's
Nazi.
because I'm a white supremacist, obviously. No, but let me explain why. And I feel like I was completely vindicated because I come from social media world, and it all started with the Bernie Sanders campaign. I got suspended from Twitter. Get this, you'll love this. I got suspended from Twitter for 7 days because when Bernie Sanders won one of the primaries, Chris Matthews on MSNBC like referred to his followers as Nazis, and I said, I hope his stupid head explodes on TV. And they
And
said
that was inciting violence.
that's violence. Yeah.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, that guy Malcolm Nance had a thing. I Googled after that. I was like, I went into Twitter. I was like, okay, let me find. I had a burner account, found Malcolm Nance talking about Trump's head exploding. And I'm like, wait a minute, how come he can use
Yeah.
this metaphor, but I can't? Like, and
Well,
the
and
Twitter
that's why so
files,
many people, yeah, that's why so many people on the right were like, why is this not a standard all the way across the board? We're
yeah,
just aiming at conservatives, technically, is what they were
yeah,
claiming. But it's like, why are we getting all these bans and, I mean, outright just kicked off platforms that because they said something exactly what the other side said, but because
yeah,
it's not the other side, then, and that's who's running Silicon Valley. So, I mean, I get it from
exactly.
that standpoint,
Yeah. Well, and
but
I mean, the thing is too is what Matt Taibbi and Elon and the Twitter files exposed is that was all real. Like that's
yeah,
the reason I even brought this up is that's why I voted for Trump, because the Hunter Biden laptop thing, that was the point when I went, wait a minute, this is BS. Like they're blocking this story and calling it Russian when I
well, but it makes sense now that
yeah.
all these FBI people were
Yep.
employed by Twitter. I mean, I
Totally.
think it's funny, but it's not funny that Elon goes in there and just basically cleans house, and they'll be
Yeah.
like, "Oh, Twitter, I'm leaving." Everybody got to do their publicly. I'm leaving Twitter. It's like
Yeah.
nobody cares.
Everybody's there still too. They're all still there. Now,
Yeah.
I don't know if you followed it much, but like Elon's such a great troll, and he has
Oh,
his
he is.
problems. He's not perfect,
Yeah.
but he made Twitter better. And it's funny, on 420 is when he shut off all the legacy blue checks. And did you hear what he did? He comes out and he goes, "Listen, I'm going to pay for LeBron and Stephen King's checks. I'm going to pay for your checks so you guys don't lose yours." And everyone's
Well,
really
and even like William Shatner was throwing a big fit that he
he
had to
paid for
pay
William Shatner's
$8.
too.
It's like I'm like, really? You guys have got how many millions of dollars,
Yeah.
and you're complaining about an $8. You have to now pay $8 for a blue check. It's like,
Well,
get over yourself.
and honestly, man, I look back on the last few years and I realize like how snotty these people are. That's the other side of it.
Well, they've had the reign. They've had the
Yeah,
reins and they've gotten away with everything. So now that
totally.
they're not getting away with everything, they're totally bent out of shape.
Well, and that right there is why, like with the Bernie campaign building up to the 2020 election, those motherfuckers excuse me, those effers, they were so.
It might be hard not to cuss.
I'm trying. Yeah, I try not to. 'Cause actually, YouTube's pretty like their standards are pretty like lenient. I say fuck on some of my podcasts, but I haven't been flagged for it yet. But no, there were so those people, the liberal elites, you know, they were so mean to people. They're like, this is ours. How dare you think that you can have this power, Bernie people? Like, and it's obvious now when you look at the big picture that there's this consulting class. There's the deep state. I like the term permanent Washington is what Max Blumenthal calls it. But those are the people who were like absolutely not and looking back, man, those are the people that were the most upset about Trump winning because I want to show you this article or at least talk about it. But I was doing this piece about propaganda, and under Obama, they did what's called the Smith Modernization Act, and they made it so it's legal to run U.S. like State Department propaganda here in the U.S. And literally there are articles when Trump won where they're like freaking out about this. They're like, holy shit, we built this propaganda arm and now Trump's going to get it. And that's
the thing people don't realize. It's like these bad policies, that person's not in there forever.
Right.
So guess what? This power comes up and it's still there when the next guy comes in. And that's when they start freaking out, thinking, oh, our guy's going to fix all this stuff with this thing here. And then it's like, oh, the other guy's in now.
The other team's got control of it. Well, so this is the other thing that's funny about this is how bad this was. The Clinton campaign had scheduled a meeting to like go meet with this propaganda arm because they thought they were going to win.
Yeah. And so speaking of the Clintons with that, did you hear about that guy that's going to prison or whatever for memeing on Hillary Clinton? It's like, what is that all about?
Yeah.
That's like, how do you, I mean, if anybody really thinks we have freedom of speech,
it's ridiculous.
It's an illusion anymore because if you can get thrown in jail for a meme,
well, what
can you really say?
And honestly, the thing about that's crazy is people on the other side did the exact same thing. What he did was he had a meme that was like, hey, Hillary people, don't forget to vote on this day. And it was the wrong day. And people on the left did that to Trump supporters too. There were all kinds of like, hey, Trump supporters, don't forget to vote on this wrong day.
Well, and that's the stupid thing is, it's like, you know, if you're that uninformed, you shouldn't be voting anyways.
Right.
It's like, really, if you're just, oh, they said go vote on this day and the polls aren't open. It's like, you're an idiot. I'm sorry. That's just.
Yeah, you should.
I don't know what planet you live on.
Right. If you're voting based on what someone said on Twitter anyway, like your vote shouldn't count.
Right. It's like, okay, yeah, you're not paying attention to what's going on.
Well, and back to the meme thing, Tucker Carlson pointed out how it's not only that guy, but now it's not just the left or the right that they're going after. It's anyone who dissents against the mainstream narrative. And the freedom of speech thing, it's like all the people, the ACLU defended Nazis. Like Noam Chomsky said straight out, like, if you don't support freedom of expressions for views you despise, then you don't support it at all. Like freedom of speech isn't for the comfortable stuff, right? It's like, it's for the stuff.
I mean, if you don't have uncomfortable conversations, you're just doing what this nation's doing right now. Everybody's going to their corners and they're all reassuring each other's thoughts, and it's not doing any good because
we're spinning our wheels.
Yeah, it's like, well, we hate them and we're against them. It's like, we gotta, these long conversations like this is what really needs to happen between the left and right, if that's what you want to call it. Because if that was the biggest thing, like with Facebook or even just text, you don't get context. You don't get like an emotion or anything like that. Tone. It's just flat words. And when I heard that, and when Joe Rogan said that, I'm like, that motherfucker's right. He's like, you take it into your own perspective instead of like we're doing face to face, and you're hearing my tone and expressions and stuff like that. You don't get that on a flat text or somebody writing something on Facebook, and your mind just starts, well, they meant this, and it's like, no, they didn't. They meant this, or it's like, I don't know what they meant, because the wording sounds like it means this, but I'm saying it says this. So
I've gotten in so many fights with people over text messages or emails that it's like, no, if you heard my tone, it's not like you totally misconstrue it. But also look at what they do to people like Joe Rogan, who foster debate and nuanced conversation.
Yeah.
They demonize him. Joe Rogan is further left than like most people. If you listen to what he actually says, he gave Bernie Sanders, and that was, I think, the point when they were like, oh, fuck that guy.
Yeah.
Because he said he would vote for Bernie Sanders.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like everybody gets so upset because he's platforming people from the right or somebody that disagrees with their agenda or whatever.
He's having a conversation.
I still watch him, and I'm like, oh, I don't agree with what this person's saying. I think they're leaving a lot of stuff out.
Yeah.
In their, whatever they're talking about. So it's like, okay, I can see where they're coming from, but they're not looking at all the facts. They're just taking the amount of facts they want to get the outcome they desire. And it's that's not really doing anybody any good either, because these people are like scientists and doctors and stuff like that we're supposed to trust. But it's like, okay, so where do we sit now with like science even? Because a lot of these people, and COVID brought a lot of that out. Hey, we're supposed to listen to these experts and these doctors and stuff. Well, all these doctors that, once you start seeing the emails and the texts that people leaked out, it's like, oh, so these people we're supposed to trust were actually saying this, but then somebody got to them, and then all of a sudden, like the next day, all these stories changed. So it's like, okay, so are we really supposed to believe them? Or, I just did my own thing. I'm like, if I catch it, I catch it, whatever. It is what it is at this point.
It's crazy. That whole thing was what really changed me a lot too, because I realized how all that stuff was being used to intensely divide us. Like, you're supposed to hate your neighbor if they don't wear a mask or don't get a vaccine or whatever. They're gonna kill people. I was like, what is going on? I remember one point during like peak COVID when I was out walking, and this dude like crossed the street to like not pass me, and I'm just like,
it makes no sense.
Going on? Yeah, like anyone who breathes is a threat to me now. Like, what is going on?
Well, the stupid thing was too is all the people that were masked and getting vaxxed and all that stuff, most of them still caught it.
Ones who got sick. It's like, the vaccinated people got COVID more. I had it and got vaccinated after. I never got it again. But all the people getting boosted, they got it like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, so and I don't know, because they won't let us know essentially what the real date is. So that's funny with the, kind of it's switched everything around from, the left was all F the big pharmacy companies, they're this and that too. And this hit, the right went, no, screw those guys, and everybody on the left's like, no, we need to believe these guys. Everybody needs to get vaccinated. It's like all the doctors that got deplatformed were the ones that I started listening to. But I was like, these guys are making sense though. And you got the guy that helped develop the mRNA technology coming out and saying we shouldn't be mass vaccinating people, because especially during a pandemic, because now you're getting it to transfer and change so much faster that you're going to keep getting all of these other variants.
You're helping it mutate essentially, instead of letting natural immunity take shape. It's funny. I got in an argument with my date. Like, she over this shit. Like, she wouldn't talk to me after, we never saw each other again, because and it started over, we went out and we were in this Uber. And I said something about, I was like, yeah, well, if you're vaccinated, it doesn't matter who else is, you're protected. And she's like, that's not true. And I'm like, yes, it is. And we got in this big argument, and she goes, it's like this. if I wear a bulletproof vest, and I'm like, that's a perfect analogy, right? If you wear a bulletproof vest, it doesn't protect me from getting shot. Like, what is?
Yeah.
And then she's like, no, that's a bad analogy. I'm like, no, that's a good one.
No, that's exactly what it's doing. Like that's what
Exactly.
they're telling us. You get the shot, you get protected. So it's like, why are you
Right.
freaking out if I'm not protected?
Yeah, if I'm not vaccinated, I'm gonna die. You should go be happy, like cheer it. Like,
Right.
meanwhile, the unvaccinated are fine. Like,
Well, and I did catch it. I didn't catch the first wave. It was the second one, whatever that one ended up being. But
mm-hmm.
and it hit me pretty hard. It was like a big sinus and headache and just the body fevers. I
Sure.
never really got anything in my lungs. And there's certain people that I know that never even got it.
Wow.
Or if they did, they
If they
didn't
did,
know
it
they
was just
got it.
unnoticed.
Yeah. And it's like that one hit me hard. It hit me for almost 2 weeks. But it wasn't anything I was like, oh man, I'm going to die. I need to go to the hospital and get on a ventilator. It wasn't nothing like that. It did suck. The fevers
It's
were
like a
probably the
flu.
worst.
It's that's
Yeah.
what, the other thing that's crazy is COVID is SARS, and we've had
Yeah.
SARS outbreaks before, and that's why I was like, well, the ivermectin point was the point too when I was like, wait a minute, that's a drug that like is it's antiviral drug that it can be used in
Yeah.
any viral virus, like it stops
Well,
viruses.
when you start looking at the big picture, especially with the media, all of them SOBs are
Make money
paid for by Pfizer
totally.
and Moderna and BioNTech. And it's like they're commercial. They're like, hey, there's CNN sponsored by Pfizer, all that stuff. And it's like,
Jimmy Dore.
no, we need to believe these people.
Yeah, Jimmy Dore made this great point. And it's like he goes, Pfizer made like X amount, like 100 something billion last year alone. He's like, the entire music industry from Drake to the Rolling Stones, $12 billion. So that just shows you, like the pharma companies made like 110 billion in 1 year. Like that's how powerful they are. He's like, if you don't think that that'll buy governments, that'll buy the media.
Well, all the governments were paying for these vaccinations. I mean, we did
Yeah,
it here. I don't know how much money we
totally.
spent. And another thing that I don't even know if a lot of people know this stuff. So our NIH, whatever, has co-patents with these
Yep.
drug companies. So
Yep.
they cut us a check back. It's the whole thing with like Washington. Everybody's scratching each other's backs, all while us, the taxpayers, are getting screwed. So
Yeah.
now I've seen an article that there's actually the government is paying out people that have had injuries from the vaccine now. So guess who pays for that again?
Us.
The
Of
taxpayers
course.
again. So it's like
Yeah.
we're getting rolled over left and right, and nobody even understands it.
It's funny too. What strikes me about liberals and online, and I make fun of them for this all the time, is I'm like, you guys can recognize corporate capture in the military, in the media, but not in healthcare. Like that's exactly what's going on. Like the entire pharma and healthcare industry is captured by big corporate interests that like the guy who is on the board at Pfizer used to be the head of the FDA. You know what I mean? And one of the things that Malone guy pointed out was that during the dude who from Pfizer was on the board at Thomson Reuters, or the guy from who runs Thomson Reuters is on the board at Pfizer. Like, there's all these conflicts of interest. So the reason that I voted for Trump was because of the Hunter Biden laptops being censored, because I knew right then, because I had been censored and so many people I knew had been censored for basically what Twitter turned into was an echo chamber for the elite. And if you questioned the narrative or you said something critical of an elite, they kicked you out. And now it just came out. Did you see this story that came out the other day about the CIA guy under oath had to say that he actually, on behalf of the Biden campaign, got the 50 officers, the intelligence officers,
sign in on it
to say that it was Russian propaganda?
Well, and that was kind of the thing. So the people that were saying it on the right, I guess you could say, were the ones that were getting totally blasted on it. It's like, no, it's Russian propaganda. Well, you guys are just helping Trump and the Russians. And it's like,
Yep.
what is the deal with the Russians? It's like, why do we hate the Russians so bad? I mean, we've created this boogeyman from the 80s, that's come back. He's going to blast us with ballistic missiles. We all need to get to our bunkers. It's like, look, he has outlined a bunch of stuff that the government and the media will not tell people. He had already told me, like, look, Ukraine should not be allowed to be in NATO. You guys are moving stuff up on me, on my borders.
Do you know what the Cuban Missile Crisis was? Do you know about the Cuban Missile Crisis in the 60s?
Yeah, a little bit.
So it's like almost the same thing in reverse. Like Russia tried to put missiles in Cuba, and the United States like, no, fuck, no, you can't do that. Like we're trying to put missiles on the border of Ukraine.
Yeah, we're doing the same thing back the other way and expect to not get a response from them. It's like, but they're not telling the American people this stuff, so nobody understands what's really going on in Ukraine.
Yeah,
and to the Hunter Biden laptop thing, there's. Everybody's talking about he's on the Burisma board. He knows nothing about it, but because he's a Biden and a lot of money flowed through there while President Obama was in office and the Bidens were, the Clintons and the Bidens, and I'm sure there are tons of other people are all involved in such criminal activity.
Yep.
And nobody wants to call them out. That's the thing. That's what I'm tired of, and a lot of people I think that kind of have the same mentality as me is we're tired of this corruption, and nobody goes to jail. There's no consequences. And do you know who Jesse Kelly is?
Yeah.
So I listened to him. He's an ex-Marine and stuff, and I was like, I kind of agree with you. Is like these people have the communist mentality, and nobody's doing anything to them. So if the communist doesn't have their door kicked in, and somebody arresting them in the early mornings of the, morning time when you're in your pajamas and stuff, kicking their door in like they did to Roger Stone and those things with, CNN in tow, that's a weird thing. But it's like, if we're not doing that back, unfortunately, they're not going to stop. They're getting away with it.
Did you see the guys, the black socialist guys that were recently indicted for Russian propaganda? Did you see the whole thing about that?
I might have. I don't know. There's so much stuff that kicks around in my brain. I can't even keep track of it anymore.
Well, to their credit, guys like Tucker and Glenn Beck came to their defense. Like Tucker said, look, I probably don't agree with everything this guy says. It sounds like what he's saying here is pretty right on, but he's like, but he should be allowed to say it. He's like, you can say pro-Russian propaganda in the United States. It's protected by the First Amendment. Just so is anti-Russian propaganda.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's like, that is exactly what the Constitution was written for. It's amazing they had the foresight they did back in the days, breaking away from England, it was a big deal, but they were like, look, if we don't do this now, it's never going to happen. And however they came up with the ways to write the Constitution and, to give their people a way to govern themselves. And I think that's where we've gotten away from is governing ourselves. We just send people to Washington and then we just turn around and do whatever we're doing, not paying attention to what's actually going on back there.
And there's no term limits. We need term limits in Congress. I think you and I talked about that.
Yeah, like we said before, the uniparty stuff. It's like all these people that have been in there 20 plus years, they're all scratching each other's backs. It's like, hey, you know what? We're gonna have these ridiculous bills that are 2,000, 4,000 pages long and trillions of dollars, and everybody's throwing their little crap in there left and right. And then everybody's just signing it. It's like, oh yeah, we gotta pass this. Well, maybe we should read through there and see what's all in it. No, we just need to pass this.
Well, they make those bills so big that they can't possibly read them too. Matt Gaetz was on Tim Pool talking about this. And man, so this is what's so crazy to me, right? Do you remember at the beginning of this year when the Freedom Caucus people refused to vote for McCarthy and they kind of held their vote hostage and people called them terrorists and there was a big... So that is something that Jimmy Dore tried to get the left to do to Pelosi when she was up for a vote. And basically that's the point that I realized all like AOC and the squad and all these people are frauds, because AOC, I donated to her, man. Like, she ran as a outsider that came to disrupt Washington. She got in there and did the exact opposite. And Jimmy Dore was like, look, Pelosi's up for a vote. Well, here's what you guys need to do. You need to hold your vote and tell her you will not vote for her unless she does a floor vote for Medicare for all. Of course, it's not going to pass, but we want these people on record during the pandemic, when everyone's supposed to be sick and dying, voting no on healthcare. And every single one of them called Jimmy Dore violent, like he's inciting violence. They obfuscated. They did everything they could. They made all kinds of excuses. All the little like media groups on the left, like Young Turks and shit, came out and made up fake excuses. And they tried to say that McCarthy would become speaker if they didn't vote. No, and these guys, the Freedom Caucus, did it and proved all of them wrong and made them all look stupid, because it just kept coming up for votes. And Gates was like voting for like, Mickey Mouse and shit. Like, they were just voting for whoever, and they got concessions. And the reason I thought of this is because
that's what Congress is supposed to do.
Exactly. And one of the things the reason I thought about this is what you said. Gates said one of the demands that they had for McCarthy was single item bills.
Yeah. What they've been doing now since Bush, essentially, is just these bills get
omnibus.
Yeah, and the continuing resolutions, they're horrible for us, the U.S. citizen. They're horrible. And people, I try and tell people all the time, it's like, I hate politics. I really do. I hate it. But I feel like if I'm not paying attention to it, I might as well just bend over everywhere I go with a bottle of lube in one hand and just let them hammer me, because that's what they're doing anyways. It's like, I would rather at least know what's going on so I can say, hey, you know what? I'm tired of getting up the wazoo every time I turn around. You guys are doing something.
It's true.
Well, it's if people aren't informed on it, and that's, like I say, we send people to Washington because they say the right things, that we vote them in, and then they get there and then they do just something different.
And the founders wanted us to pay attention. They expected us to. There's quotes like, hey, it takes like a high degree of, you got to pay attention to what's going on. And like, there's quotes about
engaged.
Like, liberty requires like constant attention. Like, and that's the other thing that I tell my kids this too. It's like politics, it's like sports, but like sports doesn't affect your everyday life in the same way that politics will. And it's crazy too, because, and this is another reason I want to start having these conversations with you, man, we all want the same things too. And we get divided over these stupid cultural issues, where if we had a long form conversation about them and we sat down, we would probably agree on most things. And I just, before I'll let you talk for a second, but I want to tell you this one other thing that I thought was interesting about this morning. The last time I went to church with my mom, and I went into Sunday school class, and there was this lady there, and she was trying to get the Sunday school teacher to find a scripture that would prove her Mormon friend was wrong. And I was like, wow, like, why not try to find common ground? Like, why do you have to like be like, I'm right and you're going to hell?
Yeah, you know what I mean? I don't get that either. It makes no sense for the most part. It's like, religion's a weird thing. I'm not going to get into that too much.
Right.
It's like us trying to prove each other wrong doesn't get us anywhere.
And I want to get away from that. I think that's the problem we've had in politics, is it's turned into like this WWE entertainment thing, where it's like it's bigger than that. It's like
it's
brother, wild. I'm a Republican and I'm gonna bury you.
And it's like, it would be more entertaining. We'd just throw them all in the Congress and lock the doors and say, hash it out.
Yeah. It might actually be better if they did have to like UFC fight each other.
No, it's like something might get resolved at least.
Okay, like Congress has to fight to the death until like 3 of them are dead, and then we get 3 new ones or something. You just put them all in a pit. It's like Hunger Games.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, that's my daughter got into that and was watching this series and stuff, and I'm like, I hope this doesn't happen, but the way these world governments are pushing policies, it's really, I mean, it may not happen for 10 years because these things kind of slowly grind down. And then next thing you know, you're in the middle of it. It's
Yeah,
like these Hunger Games, the way the Netherlands and the northern countries over there in Europe were trying to force farmers into not using fertilizer and all this stuff.
dude.
That's like we get so much food from these farmers that people aren't going to realize it till it's too late. And can you imagine what's going to happen with society if food resources are gone
It'd be
or even just short? I mean, society breaks down super quick over, natural disasters. What happens? Stores are cleared out. Water's usually the first thing to go, and any food that'll stay good for a while. And it's like,
we
and
were
that's just a natural disaster. Imagine if this was. Oh, let me ask you this: have you ever really gone to the WEF forum and watched some of the videos of those people are psycho.
you're gonna eat bugs and own nothing.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, but to their defense, I get what they're trying to say, but at the same time, I don't think it's the problem that they're so involved with. They're like, oh, to save the world and save humanity,
Yeah.
we've got
What's
to cut down on eating beef. It's like, you know what? There's a lot of people that have been lifelong vegans that now have said, my body can't sustain not eating meat.
yeah,
It's just not sustainable. It's everything is in proportion. You got to have stuff
sure.
in proportion, or you drink too much beer, it's not good for you. You
Right. Too
eat
much
too much,
water can be
yeah,
bad for
too much
you.
water can kill you. It's like
Yeah.
you got to have everything in moderation. So it's like, yeah, there's probably things we could change, but unless you're just dictatorially forcing everybody to do something, it's never going to happen. It's like
I think
I now work with farmers all the time. That's my job. We help them
yeah,
get their water to their fields essentially. And you hear some of the stories that these guys have as far as like what the government restrictions are on them just trying to produce goods. Wheat,
yeah.
hay for cattle. Because you can't just let them graze all winter long. They bring them into stockyards and then they got to feed them. So other farmers will raise hay, and then that's the feed for these cattle during the winter. And then during the summer, they'll take them out on the range and let them free range. But it's just crazy the restrictions that are put under, because a lot of these, to put up a pivot, which is just them big sprinklers that go out through the fields,
Hmm.
they're fairly expensive. So a lot of your small time farmers, they can't afford to just go put them up everywhere, but they do water more efficiently. So the government luckily has programs that they can actually get a good percentage of those projects paid for, but they got to do it the way the government wants them to do it, which
Hmm.
for the most part is pretty straightforward. It's nothing that's too crazy out of the way, but without that funding there and to try and optimize water, because I think it's the Biden administration now is trying to do a lot with the Western states, especially the water optimization stuff, where every state's now federally required to come up with a water conservation program.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
I
we
saw
try
a
and,
thing about that on John Oliver did a piece about that, like Utah and Colorado and Nevada and Arizona kind of all fighting over the Colorado River rights.
yeah. Well, it's everything kind of drains that way from all of Uinta Basin area out towards Roosevelt, Vernal, all that stuff. It all drains down in there. A lot of it drains to the Green River. The Green River runs to Colorado. But a lot of the problems we've had is the federal government stepping in and trying to control it from Washington D.C. when they don't come out here and visit these states and know what the hell's going on. I mean,
Yeah.
these are essentially, yeah, we got mountains and stuff, but we're essentially desert states for the most part. We've
Hmm.
just learned how to cultivate it.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Utah is vastly desert. There's like a couple like it's like the Middle East where they have like the Fertile Crescent. There's like
yeah,
that one
yeah.
little line of like space by the water that's
Well, if you even look on Google Earth or anything like that, and you go out across Nevada, I mean, it's probably
empty.
90% desert, sand, whatever. And then you've got these green patches where there's underground rivers and stuff usually that they can drill into and pump out of. And there's crops. That's where the farmers, there's water there, and that's the only green spot in the place. There's just these little farming communities that pop up. There's a place that we've been working out, and it's called Callio. It's right out on the corner of the Dugway Proving Grounds and the Nevada border.
Okay.
And it's nothing but desert. I mean, it's desolate. And then all of a sudden there's this little farm community with about eight
Little
or nine.
pop-up.
Yeah, because there was water there at one time and somebody settled it.
Well, that's one thing that's crazy when you think about with the US is we have a lot of land that's like untouched. Like there's a lot of open land. Like if we could pipe water into it or,
Yeah.
we've got a lot of land. On that note, I was thinking about the Ukraine. Like, so one of the things I wanted to talk about, and I think this is relevant, is the like Make America Great Again, America First type stuff, because I think people misinterpret that. And the more that I see stuff going on, like what you said, it's like we're dumping all this money into these other countries, and it's like, and there's tent cities everywhere, and our railroads are crumbling and our bridges are crumbling, and it's like when you're talking about government subsidies for farm, like I fully support that.
At least we're getting something back from it, It's like the 100-some-odd billion dollars we just sent to Ukraine, they're not even keeping track of where this money goes.
Man,
there's no accountability. It's like, oh, well, they need another $50 billion. It's like, $50 billion. It's like, holy crap.
For what?
You used to not even be able to fathom when the government would talk about billions. And now it's just like, what's another couple $100 billion? It's like we're 32 plus trillion dollars in debt. That's what.
So it's funny too,
and growing.
We're just printing the money too.
Oh yeah. Well, that's funny. If people want to know why everything costs so much, you got to understand inflation.
Yeah. Well,
and the Fed. You got to understand the Fed.
So my job recently, we should talk about this a little bit because I don't know if I told you about all this. I worked for a commercial real estate firm. And so I promoted like an event with Larry Summers and shit that we did. Like the guys that I was working with were like high up in the capitalist world. Like dudes that fucking sell like dude, like they sell commercial real estate. Like their low tier shit was like $20 million.
Yeah. Big dollar stuff.
Yeah. So they were talking about all this Fed shit and tweaking like with the Fed and all that kind of stuff. And I think that a lot of that is what brought in, but what I wanted to tell you about is how I lost my job, because that's another thing that I think has gotten out of control is I got HR'd out of work by a woman who said that she basically accused me of microaggressions. And I had to do a course on microaggressions. And it's like anyone who knows me, like I'm the most kind, like accepting person of everyone. And this was just like one of those angry Karens who she was frankly mad that I got a job above her that she felt like she deserved. So she was just looking for so she reported me to HR because I said, this is what I said verbatim in a chat. LOL, Sherry, hater. Like, because she said something so I said LOL, it even said LOL, and she reported that to HR, and they actually took that seriously. And anyway, long story short, I got thrown out of the corporate world, and so I kind of wanted to talk a little bit, because you're a good person I think to talk about this with, about the difference between what my world calls the professional managerial class and the working class. Because I've always considered myself a part of the working class, even though I'm like kind of in that like white collar corporate world, of advertising and stuff like that.
Well,
and
so I think if you got a job, I mean, you're in the working class essentially, unless you're the CEOs of these big corporations.
That's a good way to look at it.
There is a line where you're above the working class essentially, but you got connections with the right people and all that stuff.
I'm not in that group by any means. Like,
oh yeah, I mean that's all of us, right? Where I mean, we're doing what we know how to do to make a living and try and support ourselves and our family. I mean, that's essentially that's the working class. The other class
And I think
that's above that doesn't have to work. They just go there for the power trip, I think, Like,
yeah,
oh, I control this and I'm gonna make it do this.
right.
And that's where they take it. And some of them are pretty sane about it, and other places they've just gone insane about it.
I think some of them on that note, I think some of them have vision to like do something like an Elon Musk. I think he might have his faults, but I think he genuinely wants to do positive things for the world when I hear him talk.
Yeah.
Versus like Jamie Dimon, who's just like, I run JP Morgan Chase and I make tons of money. It's like,
Yeah.
what are
It's
you
just
doing,
like
Jamie Dimon?
a power freak, and I just want more money. That's all I care about.
Right.
Because I'm at the top and I'm making all this money and I can do whatever I want. There's like a breaking point where everybody just kind of either stays level headed, like Elon. He's got a crap load of money.
Yeah.
But he's probably just too smart to have that kind of mentality. Like, oh, I just want to do stuff to make more money. I mean, obviously he wants his companies to do good,
Right.
but he runs them more conservatively. Like if he can go in and clean however many people out of Twitter that he did,
What he did with Twitter is amazing.
and make it still work just as good, if
I
not
mean,
better.
the reality is a company like Twitter could be automated for the most part. Like you need people to manage servers, which you could outsource.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's really
But at
not.
least if you have it in house, you kind of can control what's going on.
Yeah.
If you're paying attention,
I'll say from personal experience, I think Twitter under Elon is better than it's ever been. He has this thing called community notes that's absolutely amazing. Like Joe Biden came out and tweeted like Americans are doing better than ever the other day, and they put a community note on it. They're like, he's like, I'm the most pro-union president ever. And then the community note said, actually, Joe Biden helped crush a railroad union strike earlier this year. And they like had like
for
the
paid
point.
sick days. It's like, how can
Yeah,
you not have paid sick days? At least
dude.
a certain number,
And then they turn around and try to blame that East Palestine thing on Trump.
I know that was
Like
such a weird thing.
that's
Well,
the other thing.
it's still the whole thing of the Trump derangement syndrome, and it's a real thing. I mean, people are like Trump derangement, whatever. It's like no,
it's
because
real.
I mean, he's not even president, and you guys cannot get him out of your brain.
They can't stop. Yeah,
he lives rent free in your head.
Everything is his fault. Well, I feel like the Russiagate thing, right? Most people who know that that's completely fake at this point. It's all been debunked.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about it the other day, and I kind of thought back, and I was like, you know what? As much as I hate that, I kind of feel like Trump deserves it just a little bit because of the birther shit under Obama.
Well, and I mean, that's kind of what our politics have turned into, right? It's like throw mud, and if something sticks, then it benefits you.
Right.
And he did that to the Republican Party, to everybody in there. He just like railed on them, and finally, he's a good reader of how the nation is feeling, I think. Like the majority, not all these little loud, squeaky groups that are getting the grease right now. He understands that we need. I mean, I know this is super controversial. We need some kind of a border security.
I see. Here's the thing. Stop right there for 1 second.
Okay,
this is one thing I want to ask you, because I don't think that that's controversial. Like even Bernie Sanders will say like, we need good immigration. We need a border. Like I keep hearing people say that there's people that want open borders, but I've never seen anyone argue for open borders. But I agree with you.
It's
100%.
It's the secret money behind. I know it's going to be kind of Alex Jones conspiracy theory territory. But,
Alex Jones has been right about a lot of stuff. So
and that's what was funny on the Joe Rogan, because he's been friends with him forever. He's like, he's been telling me this shit for years, and all of a sudden, all this stuff comes out finally. About all this that it says it's true, and I'm like, what the?
I mean, Alex Jones had a beef with Jimmy Dore, and I watched Alex Jones was I watched Jimmy Dore a lot, because Jimmy Dore does what I think Jon Stewart used to do, which is pull up like little news items that maybe people missed and go like, hey, look at this, or like make fun of how the media is all repeating each other and like glossing over important stuff.
Yeah.
But Alex Jones was actually saying how much he likes Jimmy Dore. And then he was talking about how there's like the independent media is a bunch of little Alex Joneses, and I was like, he's
Yeah,
right.
pretty much. I mean,
Like he
because we've had to create something different because the mainstream media
totally.
is all parodying the same stuff.
And to his credit, man, Infowars is the OG independent media. Like
Yeah,
he was doing that shit in like the early '90s, you know,
yeah.
way
Well, and
before
and
anyone
it
else.
it, it kind of sucks. He kind of went off the deep end with the whole school shooting thing. Which got him
Yeah,
in trouble. Which, I mean, I think it was a little excessive what they fined him with and
it
stuff.
was.
But at the same time, it's like he knew he was in a bad place at that time. He was drinking a lot and was getting into drugs, whatever, and just said a bunch of crazy shit. And he at least
Yeah,
admits it, and said, "Hey, I was wrong, whatever."
he suffered the consequences.
Yeah, yeah, oh yeah, big time.
He doesn't seem like a bad person though, and I watched this interview with him. Like he's good friends with I watch all the Rogan people and the Tim Dillons and the Tony
Yeah,
Hinchcliffe and all those guys. And I mean that's where it's at really. Like that's where the real rubber meets the road. Like there's no one better than Joe Rogan, and that's again why he's so demonized, because
because
he
he'll
has.
give people a platform that other people don't agree with.
And
That's
also,
the ultimate
yeah,
freedom of speech.
all he's doing really is having experts in their field on and asking them questions. Like that guy, he
Yeah,
had that guy Matt Walsh on, and I don't agree with everything Matt Walsh says, but like there were points where Joe Rogan was just like kind of made him look silly by just asking him questions.
yeah,
And it's like but there's other points where I was like, oh wow, I didn't know Matt Walsh thought that he's actually right on that. So
yeah.
it's like that's the kind of conversation we need these days, these nuanced conversations, and we're so divided up into these cults where everyone now, I get this on the left more now than ever. Like the right people will disagree with me on something and we'll battle or whatever, but the left people will block me and go hide in their own little personal echo chamber, where the right people will disagree maybe, but they're not like going to unfollow me and lock me out. Like we disagreed on that one thing, we still agree on a lot of other stuff, you
Yeah,
know.
well, and that's kind of a weird thing. Well, and before I get too far out of the weeds here, so my Alex Jones stuff is the open society or something
Oh,
like
the
that.
WEF stuff.
Well, it's strongly financially backed by George Soros, the
Okay.
Open Border Society.
Yeah,
So
okay, that makes sense.
there are people that are actively want it, and if you look into George Soros a lot deeper, you find a lot of crooked stuff that he funds. So it's not tied to him directly, but his money is backing it. So you
Yeah,
got to follow the money.
this is
And then you
another
start
one.
finding it's like, oh, he donates a lot of money to this group, and then they donate to this group, and then this group does this. And it's like, oh, okay. So you start connecting the dots backwards, and you
Yeah.
start seeing it's like, well, he's not doing it himself, but the people he funds are. So it's like
So
he's kind of doing it, but
yeah,
not
totally. No, no,
directly,
no, dude,
you
you're
know?
right. So this is one of those things too, where that was one of the things with Soros where I was like, oh, that's just like 5 years ago, I'd have been like, oh, that's just nonsense. That's just some conspiracy. No, that was real. The crazy part about guys like him too is they'll call you an anti-Semite if you like say something about Soros and how he's funding
Yeah.
stuff. But if Sheldon Adelson on the right does a lot of similar stuff. Like he bought out Trump, like donated a lot to Trump, and because of his money he gave Trump, Trump moved the Israeli embassy or the American embassy to Jerusalem. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's
Yeah.
like it
It's like,
happens on both sides, but also but the liberal side wants to like deny it and ignore it, and
yeah.
or like call it anti-Semitism when it's like, okay, if I criticize Sheldon Adelson for what he's doing, because
Yeah.
he's Jewish too. Is that anti-Semitism?
Yeah. It's a weird thing. It's like, well, and the whole Nazi thing, it's like
Yeah,
it's the boy that cried wolf too many times. It's like, your words don't even mean anything anymore.
yeah.
Like,
Everyone's a
oh,
Nazi.
you're a Nazi because you didn't agree on climate change or something. It's like, look, I live in the same world you do. It's like I though am not looking at just what the media propaganda is telling me and looking at our actual environment around us. I've grown up in the mountains here by my house. I've seen and talked to even older people. Like my old neighbor, he's 98 years old now. And when we were going through this drought, he's like, "Oh yeah, I remember, when I was a kid, we had droughts like this." So it's like before our time now going through droughts, it's like, yeah, well, I've been lived through droughts worse than this.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so and the climate change thing's a whole entire different thing that I think that these experts have left out a lot of information that could change the outcomes of their models.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you're just saying, okay, our CO2 level goes up, right? And we know greenhouse gases cause warming. But a lot of people have come out and said, we as humans can survive better with the earth warming than we can if it decides to go the other way.
Sure.
We're jacked.
Yeah.
Because like, yeah, the ice caps are melting. They want to use the polar bears as an example. Oh, all these polar bears are dying. They find one, the sickliest bear they can find because it's got some disease or something.
Yeah.
Like, this is because the ice is melting. These bears are dying. It's like, I can go show you a black bear that looks just like that. Is it because ice caps are melting that it's sick and dying? No, it probably caught some disease and it's dying. I mean, that's nature. Nature's brutal.
It's like Sally Struthers or those
Yeah.
Louis C.K. has a bit about the dogs. He's like, why are all these dogs wet? They're hosing. He's like, these dogs are beaten every day. Please send money and we'll stop beating them. It's like who's hosing these dogs down? It's funny too, because this is something that a couple years ago I would have fought you on, but now I see what you're saying completely, because you're not arguing that, greenhouse gases are good or that like there isn't pollution. What you're saying is there's alarmism, and it's being and that I completely agree with, because if you look at like Al Gore's movie, for example, Inconvenient Truth, he makes claims in that like we would be in the doom situation by like 2013 or something, and we're well past 2013.
And AOC's, we got 12 years if we don't spend trillions of dollars going all this green stuff that's not proven, first of all, and us, the taxpayers, are paying for, once again, for an experiment that we have no idea what the outcome's going to be. And I think due to knowing like solar panels and all that stuff, it's great. I mean, if I had the money to outright buy the panels out,
sure.
I argued with the sales people, they come around.
They're aggressive.
Well, and they're just young kids. They don't know any better. Yeah. It's a summer job, so they're just coming and trying to tell you why you should have solar panels. It'll eliminate your power bill. I'm like, okay, how does it do that? Well, we'll average out your power bill, and then we'll design a system that now, instead of paying the power company, you'll pay us for the solar panels. So you're just changing who you're paying. It's like, I'm not getting rid of my power bill. I'm just paying you guys for the solar panels. I was like, if I had them 20 grand or whatever they quoted me last time to put them on my house outright, and then it gets rid of my power bill, then that makes a little more sense. But I don't have 20 grand laying around to throw a bunch of solar panels on my house to get rid of my power bill.
Right.
Because if that was the case, I wouldn't be worrying about my power bill in the first place.
You're also like, yeah, right. It's like, okay, my power bill is going to be X amount of dollars for the next 10 years. Is that going to add up to more than $20,000?
Yeah, it's a long. Well, and that's the thing. So I got a buddy that installs them, and he's like, I install them, but I understand solar panels. He's like, I don't even have them on my house because they're only like, when they're brand new, they only are like 33% efficient anyways. Mm-hmm. And then every 5 to 10 years, they start breaking down just in the natural being beaten by the sun. Mm-hmm. The cells start breaking down. And then in 20 years, they need to be replaced because they're only putting out like 15% or whatever. I don't know what the exact numbers are, but they get less and less every year. Well, then what do you do with the solar panels? You tear them down and go throw them in the dump. So it's like, are they really any greener? Then, I mean, we have an abundance of natural gas that we know is pretty clean. I do agree we do have to kind of work our way probably out of coal. I mean, we're getting too populated in areas, and we need energy.
Well, check this out. Did you see, this is like, there's these kind of news stories always get lost in the mix because they're not like scary or like doomsday, but the Department of Energy kind of like figured out cold fusion recently. Did you see this story? They actually like they've been doing these experiments where they're like shooting these lasers with megajoules into these little things, and then they put back more energy than they're sending in
Oh
now.
wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, so basically what they were saying is at this point, all they need, and this is to go back to the global warming thing. I saw Elon Musk say, he's like, is global warming a problem? Yes, of course. Is climate change a problem? Of course. Yeah, like we're putting out, but he's like, is the world going to end because of it? No. He's like, there's all kinds of things we can do. Like people are talking about running out of water. He's like, the earth is 70% water, dude. All we
Yeah,
have to do is desalinize some of it.
yeah.
Like, and
Well,
that's
and they
yeah.
won't because it's a money game. That's all it
Right.
really is. It's like it costs a lot of money to build these desalination plants, and if somebody that's investing in that plant isn't making money back from it, because it is expensive to put those plants together. But
Yeah.
it's like they're here in Utah, they're freaking out about the Great Salt Lake disappearing. It's like it's I mean, I can look up on the hill. We got maps that show where Lake Bonneville used to
I was just gonna say
It's
that.
been evaporating for eons, you know? It's like
It's like
what
the
did you
last puddle.
expect?
Right.
Yeah.
It's like the last puddle of Bonneville,
It's
basically.
like it doesn't drain anywhere, and it's been, the population of Utah has gotten so much bigger over the last
since I left.
15, 20 years,
Yep.
It's like we build all these pipelines, and we build all these homes everywhere, and we're sucking all this water out of the aquifers before it ever gets to our streams and rivers. So if we don't look at that into our equation, then we're just saying, oh, it's climate change and the lake's going to dry out, and then all these toxic dust and stuff's going to be able to blow through Salt Lake. It's like, well, why we have the worst time trying to adapt to changing climate. Like climate is changing all the time. We just are horrible at adapting to it until it's too late. Like, oh, now there's a crisis. We got to do this stuff.
And it's because
we could have been doing this forever ago, just looking at it and understanding logic and the water cycles. It's like lake evaporates, it rains, rinse, repeat, and it's like
we know this is happening. Yeah, like we could take steps. Like this is the thing that's so frustrating about politics too, is and why I think one of the reasons I think Trump was popular. I was a fan of Trump like way before he got into politics because I started my own business. So I read books by business leaders. And one of the things he was good at is getting into these projects that were like overblown and getting them finished like in a couple years. And I think to that note, it's like that's what we really need in the government right now. We need like a consensus. We need working class people on the left and right to come together and go, hey, like why don't we have high speed rail all over our country like China does right now? What the fuck is going on? Like, why are we 20 years behind everyone else? And it's all because, and you and I have talked about this, someone's making money off the problems. So we can't fix the problems because people are making money off them the way they are.
And I didn't realize it until I had watched Joe Rogan had Colin Noir or whatever his name is.
Yeah, I know.
He was on there. The NRA guy. Yeah, and he was talking about the homeless problem, and Joe Rogan's like, no, that's not real, whatever. And he's like, no, go look up this and this and this. And he's like, it's a business. They don't want to fix the problem. It's like, these people start looking at their salaries. It's all public information.
I saw that.
And he's like, holy crap, that makes total sense now. He's like, every year the budget's getting bigger to solve the homeless problem. And these people get raises, and did you see?
Did you see Trump's recent rant about his like plan to fix homelessness? Did you see this? Okay, I'm gonna send you a new meeting link because we've got like a minute 47. Let's do another half hour and let's watch it because it's actually fucking good. I did a piece on it. And I was like, it's like you'll never guess who the most progressive homeless policy is in the 2024 presidential election right now. It's Trump.
But it's supposed to be Gavin, isn't it? I mean, that's what he ran on.
Well, but I mean, the thing that's crazy about this too is no one else is talking about this problem, right? So even if you disagree with some of the stuff he says, you have to go like, okay, well, who else is even has a plan? No one. Yeah. But yeah, again, it's like no one else. Trump is coming out right now and like, based on all the stuff he said and his son has said publicly, I'm like, you know what? Like, if it's Trump Biden, I'm voting for Trump because Trump Jr. said, "This is so great." I did a bit on this, but his exact words were, "Burn it all down." He's like, he goes, "I think a Trump second term, a lame duck Trump, is way better than the other Trump because he's not trying to get reelected, so he can do a lot of the stuff that the party's going to hate him for."
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that because personally, I don't think he was treated fair enough, especially by the media and the Democrats and even the Republicans that were just never Trumpers. And it was a weird thing that as soon as he announced, all of a sudden it's like something clicked, and now the narrative was this now.
You know what happened?
We can't do Trump.
Check this out. Because I just did a whole thing about the neocons moving into the Democratic Party. That's exactly what happened because Trump had expressed anti-NATO rhetoric. And so as soon as Trump, like, it looked like, I read there's a whole article about this. The Kagans, Robert Kagan, do you know who his wife is? Victoria Nuland. She runs.
That's what's so weird. There's all these interconnected people.
Yeah, the Uniparty.
Washington and these corporations and this and that. It's like,
hindsight is always 2020, right? Like, it's so clear to me now that, like, the Hillary Clinton part of the Democratic Party. So Hillary ran the State Department under Obama. And so it's like when Trump wasn't supposed to win.
Yeah.
So when
nobody thought he was going
to. No one thought he was going to win. In fact, I think he pretty much thought he was like going to lose. Like but when he won, the people from Hillary's State Department who were supposed to have jobs in her administration were like,
yeah, and I'm unemployed.
Yeah. So like Jake Sullivan and all those people, they spent and what's his name? Oh God, Podesta. Oh my God. Like, there's no worse people than these people. They spent the next 4 years using the propaganda arm to go, Trump's a Russian spy. And that had two purposes. First, it kept the Democrats from having to admit that they actually lost the election because they sucked.
Yeah.
And also have the dual purpose of ramping up propaganda, like greasing the American mind for the Ukraine thing with Russia, because it's like, oh, Russia. Oh, look, see, Russia fucked up our election. Now they're in Ukraine. Oh,
well, and I think there's a lot of stuff that's tied with the Bidens, Joe and Hunter, in Ukraine, that they now have to protect whatever it is they're hiding over there from everybody. So they're like, oh, it's because of the Russians. This is why we got to give them $50 billion worth of our military equipment. This is why we got to keep giving them money, because I think Zelensky is a fraud myself.
He totally is. Did you see the report?
The corruption's still there. It's just under a different guise.
Yo, did you see the Cy Hirsch report that just came out? That Zelensky's actually, but I'll send it to you if you haven't read this yet. So Cy Hirsch, who's like a really, like, Seymour Hirsch, he broke the My Lai massacre story in the 70s. He's a very well, like, credentialed journalist. He broke this story that Zelensky is skimming money off the fuel money that they're buying fuel from Russia.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I think this whole thing is just a scam. Like, even so, here's another thing.
It is a scam.
I think the government is working to try and essentially, they keep saying, "Oh, Trump's going to be a dictator," whatever. But there's more.
Oh, did I lose you again? Hold on for a second. Did you freeze on me? I'm going to pause. Let me start recording again. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so that the whole scam of that money going over there and all of the 3-letter acronym, deep state, essentially.
Yeah.
Intelligence community. I mean, you heard it from Chuck Schumer.
Yeah. They have so many ways,
ways to get it. And it's true. I mean, they have all the information from everything. I mean, the NSA, FBI, CIA, all of this 3-letter acronym bureaucracies, I think, are working to try and take more and more power to themselves.
Of course.
Because now with that leaker, that supposed leaker that was like National Guard or something.
Yeah.
Supposedly this stuff's been out on the internet for
a while.
a month or two or whatever. It's like the people that have been more higher up in those agencies or even in the military, like there's no way this guy could have done that without somebody knowing
Getting it to him.
That he did it. So it's like, okay, so they've let him leak this stuff out thinking he's being a whistleblower or whatever.
You know why they're doing it, right?
And then, well, that's what I'm alluding to here is what I think anyways.
Yeah.
So they automatically like know who this person is and they go and arrest him. It's all this public video, you know, it's all over the news. Oh, we found this leaker. We're going to get this stuff fixed. And then Congress comes out with that, what's it
Restrict
called?
Act.
Restrict Act. So if you start looking at that, it's like, okay, who are you restricting?
Yeah.
Oh, the general public.
Exactly. We need to protect you from. We need to like Jimmy Dore made the best. He summarized this so well. Like he broke it down so well. He's like, we need to have someone else read stuff for you to make sure that it's okay, that it's not going to hurt you, is what they're basically saying. Like, are you kidding?
So it seems to me like that was a whole patsy scheme to get this guy arrested to pass, just like the Patriot Act. I mean, what happened there? And we're still living under that bullcrap.
So I think you're right. Here's where I would change things up a little bit, because they were trying to pass that Restrict Act before this leaker guy was outed. And I think what happened is there was enough pushback. They went, fuck, we need like some kind of a false flag thing to like make it look like we need to do this. And so then that guy got leaked and they're like, oh, see, we need to really crack down on the internet, guys.
Yeah. And it's like, and they would love nothing more than to have that power.
I mean, like, we're already being monitored.
Us right now. I mean, they could make some bull crap up about us being some, you know, we're going to overthrow the government or something because we're talking politics, you know, like we can make up whatever the hell they want.
Well, did you see? So these black
and who's going to care if we disappeared?
Totally.
You know, other than our immediate family, you know, and everybody else is going, They did this.
They were talking about voting for Trump. They're gonna,
they're going to overthrow jail and throw away the key.
We just saved democracy.
Yeah, right. It's like,
the January 6th thing is another thing I wanted to touch on with you, because that thing, I had this great moment because the day that happened, I worked at this company and I was on a call with my European counterparts. One of them was French and one of them was British.
Oh, wow.
The British guy was like, oh my God, it's so terrible. What's happening with January 6th? Oh my God. And then the French chick was like, this is what she said. I thought this was
like, man, we've been doing this for months.
This is what she said. She goes, she basically called us pussies. She goes, it looks kind of like the yellow vests, but they're not doing anything
for months. Yeah.
But they're not doing anything. That's what she said about January 6th press. She goes, it reminded me of the yellow vest people, but they didn't do anything.
Well, and so if you want to get into that too, I mean, it's like right from the beginning, nobody was really in any danger. I mean, you had a couple of bad actors in there doing stupid shit, but like that Ray Epps guy.
Is
that not the weirdest thing ever?
Okay. I have some footage. I gotta like connect my hard drive so I can show it to you or find it on Twitter. But I have some footage I want to show you because I saved this footage because it was so off Twitter. And this is another reason Elon was so great, because I knew people who were at January 6th, who were on the left filming, and they were like, yo, that was not an insurrection. They're like, there were some rioters that like got a little crazy, but like most people were just like there hanging out, like protesting. Like no one, even there's footage of Alex Jones telling people not to go in the Capitol. He's like, that's the story they want. Don't go in the Capitol.
Yeah, there was a lot of people saying that. It's like, you know, go there and protest, but do not go in the Capitol because they're going to turn it around on you.
They're going to make
That's exactly what they did.
But dude,
but then they hid the evidence for what? How many months now? A year and a half?
And did you see the way that the security was like when there was a BLM protest? They had like full fucking body armored military there, and when it was January 6th, no one. They like
and you look back, Trump said, hey, look, I'm authorizing troops to be there just so nothing happened. Oh, no, no, no. You know, Nancy Pelosi and Capitol Police and whoever else is involved in there, we may never know. Or it's no, we don't need it, because they were hoping something happened because they can turn it on to Trump.
Exactly. And the best part about it, and people miss this part, is the hearings were produced by a TV producer. They hired a TV producer for those hearings.
Well, like the whole thing that everybody was laughing that Matt Gaetz was running out of there, and it's like,
oh, it was Hawley. It was Hawley. Yeah, yeah, that footage.
Yeah, and it's like it was totally edited to like 2 seconds of him running through. It didn't show everybody else that was trying to get out of the Capitol. It just shows him like, yeah, look, he was just running out of there like, he was scared to death.
So much of it has been distorted. I have this footage. Let me see.
Well, that's why they were terrified that Tucker Carlson got all those.
Well, and they stopped him. They stopped him from releasing anymore. Dude, this footage that I have.
Because if you see what had actually happened from the cameras, it was more the Capitol Police inciting a lot of the violence.
Completely.
I mean, you're shooting freaking rubber bullets down into a group of people. I mean, I'm really surprised people didn't come out with like missing eyes and all kinds of stuff. And do you see the part where that one guy's just running back and forth trying to grab everybody's flash grenades and stuff and just wildly hucking them out into the freaking crowd?
Yeah.
Like, they're really lucky it didn't turn worse than it did, because I would have been, if I was just standing there and next thing you know, I'm getting a flashbang going off at my feet, dang near lighting you on fire, I'd start getting a little bit pissed. It's like, look, we're not here doing anything, and you guys are like shooting us with rubber bullets and throwing flashbangs at us and stuff and spraying bear spray or whatever it was. We're not doing
They're inciting.
Yeah, it's like you guys are inciting us to start something. So it's like I think that's why they were so terrified of letting any of that footage out.
Watch this. You got to see this footage, because this is the piece of footage that I think is some of the most damning of anything. Let me hear. Let me fit it into the window here.
Oh, you're good.
This is fucking crazy. And I kind of like threw this in my editor so I could point it out. So watch this. So this guy gets up and starts beating on the window with a bat. Look at his, so look at that. He's got a helmet with a big Trump bumper sticker on the back.
Yeah, so that
on the back of it
wasn't staged.
Yeah, that's not staged or anything. That's not suspicious. Who puts us like? He's like, hey, look, I'm with Trump.
Yeah, exactly.
On the window. Watch what happens too. And so this is the kind of footage that was banned from Twitter. Like, people that posted this on Twitter were kicked off and blocked until Elon took over. Watch this guy, a MAGA terrorist. And I was like, oh, look, MAGA terrorists are attacking the police. Because the cops fucking beating on the window.
Wasn't somebody like grabbing him and saying, yeah, that guy? It's like, hey, quit it. You know, this is freaking the public building. We're not here to destroy stuff. Even that one guy, there was that footage of that guy that was like going up to the Capitol Police that are just standing there. He's like, hey, this is our building. Why aren't you stopping these people from breaking the windows and stuff? He's like, do your job. And they're just like silent. He's like, what the hell?
Yeah, I have a bunch of this footage. It's like, I finally fucking went and saved it. Like, there's like this footage. This was from I found this on a foreign website, but this is just like the footage. This was before Tucker Carlson got it too. This is just the footage of them walking between the velvet ropes, like in the.
Yeah, it's like it not doing anything, and
but then they show this other footage that like they talk about cherry picking footage. That's exactly like they accuse Matt Taibbi and those guys of here's another one where they're opening the gate too, where it shows the guy opening the gate.
And this stuff was all on Facebook and everything at the time. And it's like, these people are like letting them in. So how is this an insurrection? You know, they're like guiding people in. It's like, so either
did you hear
this is either planned, or they're just like, hey, there's not a problem here. Let's let these people in and protest by the steps to the Capitol.
Yeah, this guy like totally breaks it down. He slows it down so you can see the cop like pulling the gate open.
Yeah. But the ones the media ran with are the ones where they're up there shaking the gates and stuff, and they're like,
Yeah.
we're gonna take the capital, whatever they were chanting. It's like,
And
how many of these people were just sent there to cause
yeah.
problems?
Well, and
Because
my argument too is like, okay, look, if people committed crimes, fine, arrest them,
yeah,
try them. Like if
that
people
guy
have,
that was busting the window, yeah,
yeah,
charge
sure,
him
arrest
with,
those people. But everyone
yeah.
else, like, what the fuck? Like, you don't need
Yeah,
like,
they just started arresting people that were there. And guess how they did it? Oh, we traced the phone pings of all these people. So we got all these phone records of the phone pings that were all here close to the Capitol and just started going arresting them for whatever reason.
yeah,
You know what I mean? And the people that were old ladies and stuff that were getting arrested because they had walked through there. And instead of like, okay, so give them a trespassing misdemeanor or something, they're like, we're going to charge you with a felony for an insurrection. It's like, I walked into the Capitol because everybody else was.
this
It's like
is
I've never been in here.
yeah. And there are people telling people to go in. This is crazy and anecdotal, but like right before January 6th happened, I was kind of like talking to this Chinese woman that I'd met on Tinder, and we met for like coffee. We never ended up like going much further than a date or two. But I remember talking to her over coffee, and she's lived in Beverly Hills. There's a lot of very conservative people in Beverly Hills because a lot of rich people.
Yeah.
But I think she was a Chinese national. She was very wealthy, and she goes, we're like having coffee, and she's like, wait till you see. She was like, wait till you see what's going to happen on January 6th. Like, or she's like, there's a protest coming up. Wait. She was like saying, wait till you see, because she was a Trump supporter,
Yeah.
supposedly. Um,
Well, she probably foreseeing it just like everybody else did. It's like, you know what, this is if they go down there, something's going to happen. Well, so if you start putting pieces together, same thing happened with the FBI with those the Watchmen
the
or whatever.
Whitmer.
Yeah, that whole thing. There was more FBI informants in that group than there was guys they were trying to charge.
Yeah,
It was
that's
all
so.
staged.
You know what's crazy? They did. I read an article in the Intercept recently. They did They tried to do a similar thing in Colorado to leftist people, where they infiltrated these BLM groups or these like police protester groups or defund the police groups or
Yeah,
whatever. And they literally were like, "Hey, let's assassinate the AG." Like they tried to push a plot to assassinate the AG within these
yeah,
groups. And they had this chick with like pink hair who was like all, dressed up like
yeah,
she's like a social justice warrior and stuff. And it's like, so it happens all the time. And
yeah.
the last thing I'll add to that is Matt Gaetz actually was on Tim Pool, and I have the footage of this. But he said straight out, he goes, what I'm afraid is happening is, now that the war on terror is over, like all this money for war on terror is being focused on finding, domestic terrorism. And he's like,
We're creating domestic terrorism.
creating, yeah. He goes, if you give these agencies all this money, they're gonna find witches. They're gonna find witches, even if they have to make
Yeah.
them themselves.
Yep, exactly. It almost feels like we're in just a big psyops, like a big
It,
government psyops.
man, that so there's this movie. It's called The Mouth of Madness. Have you ever heard of it?
I haven't.
So the premise of the movie, it's kind of corny, like at this point in time, because it's from the 90s, but the premise of the
Right.
movie is there's this guy called Sutter Kane who's writing these books, and everyone that reads Sutter Kane goes crazy. And so there's this one guy who's like starting to notice this, and by the end of the movie, everyone in the world has read Kane except him, and he's the insane one because
Uh,
because everyone else is insane. So now he's
yeah,
the minority, And I feel like that's kind of what's happened in the US, man. Like propaganda, when you dig
like
into
1984.
yeah, everyone thinks that Trump is a secret Russian spy still, despite that being debunked. Like once you have the public in that position where it's like, oh, like anything this person says is the devil. Like people believe, like Matt
Yeah,
Taibbi is a good example. Matt Taibbi has never done anything but report accurately and fairly and spoken truth to power since day one. The only thing that's
yeah,
changed is now the Democrats are the authoritarians and he's criticizing them.
yeah.
And that
Now he's the enemy.
he's the bad guy. Yeah.
Yep.
It's like, what are you?
It's just a weird thing, and that's why I kind of just I got tired of Facebook and got rid of it because all that stuff was going on. It's like, oh, I said this, and now that goes against their guidelines. It's like, how is that even? I mean, I'm not inciting violence or anything like that. I'm just saying, hey, so here was one of the things. So I had commented something on a friend's post about I'm going to shoot you in the butt with my BB gun or something like that, just totally joking around.
Yeah.
And I got flagged for that, and I couldn't post anything for like 3 days. I was like, you guys are so retarded. I was like,
Do you want to hear some?
they don't know me and they don't know my friends, but
Right.
because I said shoot, I'm assuming it's the word
Yeah.
shoot
It's the AI or something.
was what flagged me. Yeah. And I'm
So
like,
check this
I
out.
can't even post. I'm like, I'm tired of this stuff. I don't need
Do you
it.
want to hear fucking some crazy shit? So first, one of Jaden, Ray, and Daisha's daughter, she went to University of New Mexico and for political science. So
Okay.
she has a degree in political science. All her like classmates are like political people. Her one friend Medea worked for the Pete Buttigieg campaign and the Bernie Sanders campaign, and now she works for the DNC. When she was being interviewed by the DNC, Jaden told me that they specifically asked her about me, like how
Oh,
she
really?
knows me. They're like, that guy's an extreme. That guy's a extremist or something. They're like,
Oh, so unfortunately, she's probably been indoctrinated then
well, she's still friends
through the
with me, but
colleges.
she just basically said like that they specifically asked her about me. So then it gets even crazier. So for Facebook, I had a meme page called "Conservative Memes for Militant Leftists" or something
Oh,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and dude, they started like flagging me for shit, and they pulled up a post I did like 2 years prior about like, remember when they did the stimulus money and they were supposed to, they're like, we're gonna give you $2,000, but it was only 600.
Yeah.
And the post was like, here's how you can spend your $600 stimulus check, and it had instructions for how to build a guillotine with stuff you buy at Home Depot. They dug that post up from like 2 years earlier and banned me from Facebook for like a week because of it.
I know it's so ridiculous, right? It's like it's like, and that's what I like about Elon. He's not right or left. He's just he's an actual African. He was born in
I
Africa.
know, that's so
You know what I
funny.
mean?
He's an African American thing.
Yeah, he's an African American, but that's
It's
been
true.
so
It's
stigmatized to,
true.
oh, if
It's
you have
true.
black skin, you're African American. It's like most people haven't even been to Africa or were never
Yeah,
born in
I
Africa,
know.
but because they're black, they're automatically assumed that they're African American. Like
Yeah.
that'd be like me saying I'm a Denmarkian American,
Right,
it's
right.
stupid. It's like because my family was from Denmark, on my dad's side, but it's like I'm American. I was born here. It's
One of
like
my
anybody else that's born here is American.
one of my best black friends, like we were talking one time, and he said something that just blew my mind. He goes, if it wasn't for slavery, I wouldn't be here. And I was like, that's fucked up. But like, yeah, it's true.
It's true, but at the same time, I can't remember. There was this guy talking about, oh, it's Officer Tatum. I follow him on Instagram, but he was talking about like the first slave owners in America were black people. It was a world thing. It's like it
Yeah.
wasn't just an
It was a rich people thing.
American thing. Yeah,
Yeah, it was a rich people thing. Black people had slaves too. Dude, they're like people in
the
Egypt.
king in Africa was putting them in cages for the guys to come and get them from the coast.
Yeah, yeah. The
But
Barbary Coast.
yeah, and it's like it's just been turned into, oh, it was just white plantation slave owners
Yeah,
that were doing this stuff
right.
and they were cruel to them. It's like they were, but they were a very small minority of the Americas
Sure.
in the time, and it was mostly economical reasons they had slaves, and they were pieces of crap too. But
Yeah,
they were using the cheap labor. It's nothing different than what we
totally.
do now. We just outsource it to China.
Now with the Asian slaves, like, dude,
Yeah, it's like
did you
it's
see
out
that?
of sight, out of mind. It's
It,
not us. We're good
right.
people.
It's still going. If you use a cell phone, you're contributing to slavery. Like, did you see
Yeah,
the guy
yeah,
on Joe Rogan about the Congo and the mining stuff in the
yeah,
Congo?
yeah. Oh,
It's
yeah. It's horrible conditions.
Yeah,
And it's
we're
like,
all
but
guilty
because
of that shit.
it's not right here going on in America, we're still supporting it.
Yeah.
Inadvertently, because we don't have a whole lot of other options because we've outsourced everything anymore.
And we've come a long way too. I think that kind of stuff gets used to divide us up when it's like the reality is we're all in the same boat if we're working class. Like we're all getting fucked. Like whether
Yeah.
you're black, white, Ice-T has this song called No Lives Matter. Have you heard that song?
To certain people, they don't.
It's so good.
I
He's
haven't
like it
heard
ain't
it though.
he basically says in the middle of the song, he's like, look, racism, he's like, it's real, there's racism, but he's like, the reality is they don't give a fuck if you're black, white. He's like, if you're poor, you're gonna get fucked. He's like, you don't see
Yeah.
them pulling people out of their cars in Beverly Hills because they got lawyers. They know
Yeah,
they'll fucking sue
exactly.
them, you know? Like,
Well, and that's how I feel about like the FBI and all these things. They're going after the people that don't have the means to fight back. Like the
exactly.
guy that was wearing the horns and stuff.
Right.
Like finally, after all the video came
Tucker
out,
Carlson got him out.
yeah, they're like, oh, he didn't do anything. They just had him in jail for a
He
year
just
and a
looked
half.
the weirdest.
Yeah, he
Just
looked the
looked
weirdest, and they
yeah.
could push this Trump narrative.
Right.
We got to impeach him again or throw Trump in jail because of this insurrection that wasn't an insurrection.
I think that's working against him. Did you watch that interview he
Well,
did with
now finally, but if
yeah.
they could have finally just never had any of that footage come out, we'd still be at the same place. Like, no, this guy's guilty and Trump's guilty, and they would have the AG of New York. You know that whole stupid thing too. Like if you read those documents of what he's trying to charge Trump with, it doesn't say that. It doesn't even say a crime. It just
It's
says,
ridiculous.
well, he was trying to cover up a crime by committing a crime. It's like, well, what's the crime? That he was covering up a crime to commit a crime.
You know what the irony is?
That makes no sense.
You know what the irony is too is the Clinton campaign paid a fine for funding that Steele dossier recently. They had to they misreported it as on their expense.
Yeah, and it's like it was a misdemeanor, but the same thing that Trump did. Supposedly
that's what they're trying to get him for. That he misreported. They're trying to say that him paying Stormy was a campaign donation, which is they have to prove it. Michael Cohen, the guy who lied under oath, committed
he's not super credible, but it's like, who cares if Trump did this or not? Who cares?
Exactly. It's irrelevant.
Like that's between him and his wife at this point.
Sure.
You know, if he did it or not. It's like it doesn't really affect what he's doing as the president or something, you know?
And the irony is it's the same people that defended Bill Clinton that are crucifying him over this. Like what
and his was all provable.
All right.
Like he did do this stuff.
The other thing about Trump too is it's like you can say that he's done corrupt stuff. Of course, he's done scammy shit, but he also did it in the private sector. You know, like all these other people, like Biden and Clinton, like
they're all doing it in DC
with your money. Yeah,
with your money to screw you out of more money.
Right. People don't get that. It's crazy though. But it makes me feel good to know that like I feel like people are coming around, and I think we're almost to a post-partisan type era because I know a lot of people on the left that will vote for Trump this time. You know.
Well, I mean, you see the contrast. You know, you seen what it was like during Obama. I mean, it wasn't completely horrible, and I have to agree there was some bad policy with Bush before Obama got in there. But I mean, when Obama comes out and said, "Oh, there's no magic wand to do this and that," it's like, no, the magic wand is you guys reversing policies that aren't working.
Yeah,
you know that even if they were not working great before, but they were better than what we're doing now, at least reverse back to that. And then Trump comes in and changes all these policies, and then people start noticing pretty right away.
Yeah,
hey, I got more money to spend now because I can
better under Trump. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Even even Daisha and Ray, who like hate Trump, said that they're like, and they're landlords, like they have property and shit. And here's the one thing too that I think a lot of people forget about Obama. The reason Obama beat Hillary in the Democratic primary is because he voted against the Iraq war. Like everyone was done with these regime change wars. And remember, Obama was change we can believe in. Like his original thing was like, and honestly, at that time, I was like, okay, cool. This guy seems like he's like a moderate enough Democrat that he can work with the other side and he can like get some things done that we need to get done and he'll end the wars because he was against the Iraq war. No, he came in, he did the Obamacare thing was the Republican plan that Mitt Romney did, a handout to the insurance companies. And then, he ramped up the wars for. Did you know he's related to Dick Cheney?
Really?
He's Dick Cheney's like sixth cousin or something.
Well, that makes sense now.
Yeah,
Well, and the funny thing is too, it's like I think the American people are tired of all these wars.
they
You know,
are.
I mean, you got itchy finger
Everyone is.
people that love to go to war, but the
Yeah.
majority of the citizens and even military people are just tired of getting thrown into these wars that we don't need to be involved in. It's
Well,
like Obama gets in there, he runs on all this stuff against the war, but we dropped more bombs in the Middle East
yep.
than Bush did.
Have you seen
And,
that
and
meme?
there was no accountability to it because supposedly it wasn't going on according to the news
Well,
media. And then Hillary Clinton gets into the State Department, and here we go with the regime change again. They go in and take out Gaddafi.
yeah.
It's like, that's what they talk about, that whole vacuum thing. You take out the leader that was somewhat keeping stuff stable, to now you just destabilize the nation, and the only other people there are the extremists that are the terrorists essentially.
Well, and it's so obvious now that it's like a bit like the military. I mean, I love the military and I love that we should have like we should always invest in the military, obviously, but like
Yeah, but our politicians use it the wrong way.
yeah, now it's to the point where it's like a Ponzi scheme. They're just
Yeah,
dumping all our money into it all over the place. And it's like, yo, it's not isolationism to say America first. It's not isolationism. Like they go, oh, you're an isolationist. No, I'm not Like if people need our help, we'll give it to them. But like, what
yeah,
are we
but we
doing?
we need to take care of our own citizens.
Yeah.
It's like, people want to call you a racist because, hey, I believe in, doing immigration the right way, not just letting whoever come into the country,
And
because we're
yeah,
supporting them
most people do.
with our tax money. We got to give them education and healthcare and stuff like that, just humanly things, but at the cost of the taxpayers that we can barely afford our own healthcare and stuff. It's like we can't afford them to come in here and not be paying into the system that we're all paying into.
To something you touched on earlier too, and I always say this in regards to immigration because it's a solvable problem if you go after the people that are enabling it, right?
Yeah,
Like the Soros, if you're talking about the Soros open borders thing, the people that benefit from that are like companies like Walmart that get the cheap labor from the immigrants.
yeah,
If you start finding those companies and make it like hazardous for them to do that, they'll stop doing it, and then you don't have that enablement, and then it like of course you still need like obviously strong borders and everything, but it's less likely to. The other side of it that people never think about, man, is why are these people fleeing their countries? Most of the time it's because of the other thing we were just talking about, our militaries in there fucking things up. And like, so before we close out, we got like 5 minutes left, but I want to talk about this with you because this is something I've been seeing a lot. They're talking about invading Mexico now. Have you seen this?
I've heard some stuff about it. Yeah,
So what I've heard on like left Twitter is that the reason the underlying motive here is because AMLO, the new president of Mexico, wants to nationalize their lithium market because they have a lot of lithium that you use for batteries and stuff.
yeah,
And the US is like, no, you can't do that. Like because our companies want to make money off of it. And so
yeah,
they're like, so now they're saying like, oh, we got to invade because the cartels are getting fentanyl and stuff.
yeah. Make up a crisis to
To
make it
yeah,
seem like, oh, we're going in for this, but actually we got our black ops on the other side of them doing this
yep,
other crap, and
yep.
it's like it's just going to cause a mess. We go down. I mean, I know we've got black ops people everywhere. You can't have almost a $1 trillion military budget and not have these. There's what was there, $1 trillion or something like that when they were asked to show receipts on where all this money's going to the military budget, and they're like, well, we just don't know where this $1 trillion over the last few
Yeah,
years went to. It's like, no, people that know it went into all these black ops
yeah.
projects. Nobody else is going to talk about it because then it's going to stir up, it's going to beat the hornet's nest.
Yeah, and listen, I'm all for that too. Like we should have like surgical, like covert stuff going on like that. All of course, but our budget is so wasteful.
Oh yeah.
I always remember this story, like with regards to what we are talking about with Ukraine and all the waste there and how nothing's tracked. There's this story that I always call out, and I still have it linked, about how during Iraq we sent a pallet of money, $12 billion on a pallet, and it just disappeared.
Oh yeah. And it's like, how does
We don't know we're bad. Like,
it's like, how is this stuff even legal though? Well, it's because nobody's held accountable for it. So
yeah,
keep doing it.
so we're getting robbed.
Yeah.
That's what I see. We're basically being robbed repeatedly through the tax code. And it's like because we're busy fighting over like, oh, Trump's, this, or like, Hillary's that. Like, we're not having these kinds of conversations where it's like, hey, we're all being screwed.
Dog's going crazy here.
Anyway, we should close up, man. I got 4 minutes left, but this has been
good. We really could do episode after episode. I mean, we only touched on probably a small percentage of stuff. Hey,
let's plan on doing it again, man. Like I said, what I'll do is anything to help you. I'll send you the well, let's close everything out, but let's plan on doing it like once a month or once every couple of weeks or something.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'll send you, like, I'll throw it up on Google Drive. Do you want just audio or do you want like the video?
You can send the video. That'd be fine.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and honestly, man, I'll help you too if you need help. Like, you should push on, like, I started on Rumble because I was worried that like I was going to get kicked off YouTube for COVID stuff, and like I was really careful. I'm like, I'm talking about January. I was showing that January 6th footage I just showed you.
Yeah.
I was like, Rumble's pretty safe. Like and plus, once you get ramped up with audience, you make money there on ads. If you get a following. But so then I started uploading to YouTube, and it's like my YouTube audience like just grew fast. And so then I started kind of like going like, well, I'm going to try saying this. And YouTube has been honestly good. Like they haven't censored me yet. So,
well, and I think it kind of goes to that whole thing of the left's like, we're going to kick you guys off our platform. So go build your own. Well, people went and built their own, and now they're not happy about that.
Yeah. Well, or like Elon buying Twitter and just making it like, I stopped, to your point, with Facebook. I had totally stopped engaging with Facebook. Like every once in a while I'll post some stuff on Instagram, but they flag me all the time. I hate it. It's like it makes the user experience terrible too. Like those companies will lose. Like if YouTube keeps censoring, eventually people will completely migrate to a platform like Rumble.
And then they lose money. So I mean it's not really in their best business interest to do what they're doing, but I mean, like I say, it's an ideology that's kind of taken over these big companies because they've had the market for so long that now that there's these alternate platforms and people are leaving them, they're like, oh, our numbers are going down. Maybe we should ramp down a little bit on that so we're not losing all this revenue.
Yeah. Well, and there's a concerted effort too. Like I come from the advertising world, like digital advertising and stuff. And what they're trying to do now is create these government funded groups that demonetize people that are saying stuff that isn't in line with the State Department and stuff. You know what I mean? Where it's like, oh, if you're talking about January 6th and you're saying anything that we don't agree with, we're going to make sure that no one will advertise with your content and stuff,
Yeah.
So it's getting crazy.
Yeah, well, and that's, goes back to the whole freedom of speech thing. It's like, we need to have the conversations that nobody wants to have and not just flat text, or it's only going to get worse.
Yeah. And we need to like find out like what we all agree on and work on like it has to, I think politics needs to change from like a left right thing to an issue by issue thing where we go, okay, healthcare, what do you think? Like, what do you think? How do we meet in the middle and get something that takes care of everyone, but doesn't give it all out to free to immigrants or people that are here illegally or whatever, like whatever we got to do to hash these things out.
Yeah And that's the thing, they're multifaceted problems that are trying to be solved by a single line item, and it's just not possible.
No,
it's like it takes a bunch of different things coming together to at least make it better, if not try and solve it. Where it's like, oh well, if we only do this, it'll fix it. And it's like, how is just that one thing going to fix it? It's like this is a bigger problem than what you guys are trying to say it is.
Plus, nothing is one size fits all. Like a solution for California is going to be a different solution for Texas or Utah. You know
Oh
what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah, for
It's a
sure.
different
So,
type of population. It's a different climate. It's, you know,
but it's not as controllable if you're not everybody's not in that same box, and it
right.
makes it too hard for a central government to control, which I don't think they like.
No, no. I mean, there's an aspect like that's why our system I think is good. Like there's the federal and the state kind of split. Like there's some things you need to have uniformity on to some
Yeah,
degree.
yeah, yeah.